The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division now fighting for gun rights? For decades, the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division focused on issues like racial discrimination, voting rights, police misconduct, and school desegregation. But now the Department of Justice is using that same division to challenge gun laws. And depending on who you ask, it's either a long overdue defense of constitutional rights or a complete abandonment of the division's original mission. Let's break it down. Last December, the Department of Justice created a new office inside the Civil Rights Division called the Second Amendment Section, and its mission is simple: identify state and local gun laws the administration believes violate the Constitution and sue to overturn them. And they haven't wasted any time. In just 6 months, the Department of Justice has filed lawsuits against police departments in Los Angeles County and the Virgin Islands, as well as legal challenges involving Denver, Colorado, Washington, D.C., and potentially Virginia. After Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger signed an assault weapon ban into law, Assistant Attorney General Harmet Dillon, immediately responded on X with, "I will see you in court." The Civil Rights Division wasn't originally created to handle gun cases. It was established in 1957 during the Civil Rights Movement and played a major role in protecting voting rights, fighting segregation, and enforcing anti-discrimination laws. As former Civil Rights Division attorney Megan Marks explained, gun rights have never been a focus. Marks spent years investigating police misconduct before leaving the department in 2025. She now believes the division is being redirected away from its traditional responsibilities. Gun rights organizations, however, see the new section very differently. The Second Amendment Foundation, which currently has more than 50 active lawsuits challenging gun laws nationwide, views the Department of Justice's involvement as a complete game changer. Costas Moros, the organization's director of legal research and education, said, "It's great to have that giant 800-pound gorilla in the room with us." And he continued on by saying, because courts, like it or not, do take the Department of Justice more seriously. And frankly, it's nice to have the Department of Justice at least seeing the Second Amendment as equal to all other rights. So the legal campaign began last September. The Department of Justice sued the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department over concealed carry permit delays that allegedly stretched as long as 2 years. 6 weeks later, it filed another lawsuit against officials in the Virgin Islands, arguing that permit processing delays and certain storage requirements violated citizens' rights. Soon afterward, the governor of the territory proposed legislation that would establish a 90-day deadline for permit approvals or denials. The DOJ then expanded its focus beyond permitting and began challenging bans on semi-automatic rifles and large-capacity magazines. First, Washington, D.C., then Colorado, and potentially more states to come. Not everyone is convinced that this belongs inside the Civil Rights Division. Stanford law professor John Donahue argues that gun rights already receive extensive legal support from well-funded advocacy groups. He said this: "The history of racial discrimination in the U.S. is the deep scar. While gun rights were never really under assault in a country that has more guns than people." You're full of it. Donahue also questioned whether taxpayer-funded DOJ resources should be used to pursue these cases when private organizations are already aggressively litigating them. He noted that states and local governments will ultimately bear the cost of defending these lawsuits. This controversy goes beyond guns. It raises a larger question. What exactly should the Civil Rights Division be doing? Under the Trump administration, the division has shifted away from many traditional priorities involving race, sex, disability, and religious discrimination. Instead, it's pursued investigations involving DEI programs, reverse discrimination claims, affirmative action policies, and now gun rights. According to a DOJ spokesperson, under the leadership of President Trump, this is the most pro-Second Amendment Department of Justice in history. He also added this: "We are committed to maximizing law-abiding citizens' ability to fully exercise their right to bear arms and even handily enforcing federal laws that do not infringe on Second Amendment rights." One of the most controversial aspects of this change involves a powerful legal tool traditionally used to investigate police misconduct. Following the Rodney King beating in 1991, Congress authorized federal investigations into law enforcement agencies that engaged in a pattern or practice of civil rights violations. Historically, that authority has been used to investigate allegations such as excessive force and racial profiling. But now the Department of Justice is applying the same concept to Second Amendment issues. The department says that it will investigate agencies that engage in a pattern or practice of infringing on law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights. For critics, that's a dramatic shift in its priorities. Marks argues that the division is now focused on making AR-15s more accessible. She also claims what we've seen play out is the department walking away from a number of completed investigations where they found systemic misconduct. The department is walking away from its responsibilities to marginalized communities. Supporters of the Department of Justice's approach point to American history. Moros argues there is precedent for the federal government treating firearm ownership as a civil rights issue. After the Civil War, the Freedoms Bureau worked to protect the rights of formerly enslaved Americans, including supporting their ability to possess firearms. Moros said this, "I do think it's a very clear precedent because they stood up for people who the state and local governments were trying to disarm." He also added this is definitely something the federal government has taken an interest in the past. Donahue disagrees. He argues the modern gun rights groups have long borrowed the language of the civil rights movement to strengthen their case. One example is the NRA's claim that it is America's longest-standing civil rights organization. The fight over the DOJ's Second Amendment section isn't really about guns. It's about the definition of civil rights itself. Should the Civil Rights Division actively defend firearm ownership using the same resources and legal tools it once used to combat segregation, police misconduct, and desegregation? Or should those resources remain focused on protecting traditionally marginalized groups? For now, the lawsuits are moving forward. The political battle is intensifying, and the courts will ultimately decide how far this new interpretation of civil rights can go. So let me know down in the comments below, what do you think about this? Do you see the Second Amendment as a civil rights deserving equal protection from the Department of Justice? Or do you think the Civil Rights Division is moving away from its original mission? If you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and hit that like button. Also hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.